Hi, Delaware. This is Chris Rowe, and you're listening to Al Escobar on the Delaware Real Estate Show.
All right, well, we're back with the Delaware Real Estate Show, sitting here today with Chris Rowe. Anyway,
bravo!
If we had a crowd of people here, I'm sure there would be great applause.
You got to get a little clap audio, a little applause.
We got all that. That's what the post production part is for. There'll be all kind of sound effects. Yeah. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some things that I'm ignorant to. The economy, foreclosures in the market. I say I'm ignorant to all these things because I really don't understand a lot about how they work. And like a lot of the people listening, we're hoping that we can get some light shed on a few things here. I always, before our economy collapsed or whatever you want to call it, it did what it did, I always kind of looked at the Great Depression and said, they keep saying history repeats itself. When's this going to happen? And I seen people, I was selling vacuum cleaners of all things. I did that for a long period of time. And I would be in a house and we'd take a credit report or we'd take a credit app right there and we'd call it into the office and they'd run the credit. And these people had $2,000, $2,500, $3,000, $4,000 mortgages. And that, to me, that just seemed, ridiculous. And this was, probably 10 or 12 years ago. And, we're talking about the Middletown market in particular. I see that a lot. And I just said, man, suppose these guys lost their job. Here, they're trying, they would get turned down for a $2,500, $3,000 sanitation and air filtration system for their home. They couldn't get that, but they got all these bills. And if one of them lost their job, man, they're gonna. And there was just so many of them, and I just couldn't believe that what we're in today at that point wasn't gonna turn into another big problem. If somebody, because things can't go good forever. They have to, markets go up and down, and they ride up and down. Sure. Back in the Great Depression, people stood in soup lines. They say we're not in a Great Depression right now because we don't have soup lines, but we have more people on food stamps and welfare than we ever had standing in soup lines.
You didn't have unemployment then.
And you didn't have food stamps then.
No, you didn't.
Food stamps were created as a way to streamline people from having to stand in soup lines. It was a way for people that were having some type of hardship to not have to stand, to make it, work a little bit better.
Yep.
Bankers jumped out of windows during the Great Depression. I think they're jumping out the window saying, if we don't get $900 billion, the whole world's going to collapse. And we pull out the tarp, if you will, and we catch them.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so that's something that, to me, they are jumping out the window. They're saying the sky's going to fall if you don't put out all this money. So those things are kind of parallel. People picked up cans on the street, and did what they had to do.
Yep, returned them and did what. Yeah, sure.
And they did what they had to do. Today, you don't see people picking up cans on the street. I think it's way easier for these guys to rip the copper pipe out of a foreclosed home and take the HVAC system. The scrap metal prices are up.
They probably coordinate it with their cohorts in crime on their cell phones. So they can afford a mobile phone, but they're on food stamps. I saw the picture, I guess it was about a year and a half ago or whatever, and it's this person standing in a food line, and Michelle Obama is dishing out soup, taking a picture of the First Lady
handing them soup
with a cell phone, and I'm thinking, okay, we can afford our cell phone, but we can't afford to, eat, take care of our family. I think we've gotten away from the basics in society and what's most important.
You're right.
Some of the programs that the government's come out with has basically forced families to separate. I mean, take a look at the welfare program. I know that's sort of off on a tangent from economics, Al, but if you take a look at the welfare program, I know back when Karen and I were married in the 70s and living through the 80s, that if we had some friends that had hard times and the husband had to leave the house for the wife and the kids to receive their welfare. And I'm saying, well, what good does splitting up the family do to that family, to the kids? To get a check? Something's wrong with that logic.
Yeah, that system is definitely not.
But that system is the same system we operate today.
Right, and it's far from perfect, that's for sure. Back then, people regrouped, thought of new things to do, and they win friends and influence people. That was a big thing.
Absolutely.
People reorganizing their thought processes and Today, people don't need friends. They have plenty of friends on Facebook who influence them by wall posts and twits. You know, I think we got it too easy. You know, where's the bottom in all this, and what comes next? I don't think people are learning the same lessons that they learned by watching their banker jump out the window and having to go out and pick up cans, you know, and stand in soup lines. People learned a great lesson. I know my parents and my grandparents. My grandparents probably were kids in the Great Depression. My dad was. Well, he was born in 1919, so he was, 10, 11 years old.
Absolutely.
So they kind of knew a little bit about that, and they lived a lot more conservative than people are living today.
Sure.
And now we're going through this, and I think there's a lot of parallels between the Great Depression and where we are today. But I don't think people are learning a lesson. I think they're still doing things that are going to cause things to get worse. The government isn't. What are the programs that we have available to?
Well, what we do is there's one major difference, Al, between today and then. Then the government didn't just print money, because we had a thing called the gold standard, and you could only print as much currency as we had on gold, as much currency as we had gold on deposit. So you couldn't just print money out of nowhere. Today, the Fed clicks its heel, snaps its finger, and the Treasury.
Wasn't it the same process, but it's based on a percentage versus a straight?
But you still had to.
We got this gold, we can have this much cash, but now we got this much gold, we can have 400% in cash.
Correct, but we have now what's called a fiat currency. It's a fake currency. It's tied to nothing. It is tied to zero. You still had to have something. We have nothing on deposit. These things are printed based on the full faith of the federal government of the United States. Back then, if you recall, and you've seen them, we had silver certificates.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was redeemable, as the document said, redeemable for $5 worth of silver at the Federal Reserve Bank. We don't have anything like that today. We have notes. And notes are what? Instruments of debt. They're instruments of debt. That's what the whole economy is based on, debt. And therein lies the problem. That's why we have such things as, we hear about inflation and deflation. Well, that's created by, many folks think out there, oh, well, so many dollars are in circulation. Well, we have paper dollars, but there's a thing called the M3, which is digital dollars. The digital dollars are the dollars that are transferred when you write a check and send it off. There's no currency. They don't go to the bank and slap that check. That company, the credit card company doesn't slap the check down, and then there's a teller shelling out dough there that's wired. And one has to think, how much can you create? We live in a system now which is called the fractional banking system. The fractional banking system in the United States is based upon the premise, and it goes back to when the old goldsmiths realized that they had limitations based on the amount of gold that they had. They could only give out or lend as much as they had. Well, what they started doing was issuing certificates, gold certificates and such. So what happened, the banking system adopted this, and now what we operate under in the United States is called the fractional banking system. The fractional banking system basically says, if I am a bank and I have $1, I can lend another 9 out. All I have to keep on deposit is $1. So, for that person getting that mortgage from the bank for $100,000, the bank only has to have in deposits $10,000. Where's the other 90 come from? It comes from nowhere, Al. It absolutely comes from nowhere. So money is created out of thin air, and that's why we say we have a fiat currency, because it's backed by nothing. This creates the boom we just saw, the bubble we just saw in real estate.
Because everybody's borrowing and lending.
Absolutely, brother. And guess what? Balloons can only inflate until they do what?
Blow.
Exactly. Till they pop, till they bust, and that's what happens. And as long as we operate under the monetary policy and the fractional banking system, that's all that can happen. So we will continue to see, unless something greatly has changed, continuous successions of booms and busts.
Okay.
Sorry, I went off on
No, that was good. That was good. That's fine. That's fine. It was education. I mean, now I understand a little bit better about the fractional banking system.
Yeah.
In fact,
isn't that weird?
Some of the things that I see that the government is trying to do, the Making Home Affordable program, rarely successful.
It's because of there are very few things that I've seen that bureaucrats can create that work well. I mean, I have not.
Well, I see
can't say
people.
I haven't even gotten involved with that program.
Right.
And the reason is because it is so cumbersome to do that. Now,
there's no money in it. Why would you? The only people that are involved with it are state-paid counselors,
right,
or these attorneys that have an idea of how it works and they have an understanding of how it works, and they charge you for that service.
Right.
Any government official that I know would tell you not to pay anyone for housing assistance. There's plenty of free information, and your local politicians will direct you in the right direction to go if you're having any kind of mortgage problem.
There are counselors that
there's counselors out there.
There are definitely some great counseling agencies. I know, there's a couple local here. I know, NCall in Dover.
Right.
And I think there's First State Community Housing. There's another one. And I've had, and I know upstate, you have the Hockessin Community Center. You have folks work there. And the YWCA as well. So I've worked with buyers through all those agencies. Those agencies are good agencies. Nothing, and
absolutely.
Sorry if we didn't include everybody on that list.
Yeah. But the thing I'm trying to push across there is that there's a lot of free help out there. If you're struggling financially, you shouldn't have to. I mean, if somebody provides a good service for you, it's definitely worth paying them, and they're definitely worth, being compensated. But there's plenty of free help out there. The only thing I've really seen this process do for some folks, of course, the people that it helps and it keeps them in their home, that's great.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times it's basically just kept people in their home for a longer period of time. They may have, we missed a handful of payments and we got to go on and downsize. We got to get in something smaller, and then they just bail on the house. They bail on the mortgage. They bail on the bank. What it's done is it seems like the government and the local politicians that I'm talking to, they're telling folks to stay in the house, even though they're not able to pay. It's buying them more time before they're forced out through foreclosure,
right,
or turning the property over, or doing a short sale, or what have you. And it gives them more time to save for the next move. Put up, rather than pay $1,000 or go from $2,000 to $1,000, or from $1,500 or $1,000 to $700 a month rent, or another mortgage, or however they're going to get into that. It just gives them some time. It buys them some time.
The odd thing that I'm seeing now is, and I get these phone calls, and I'm sure you've heard this conversation too, where families are strapped. They're a dual income family, and one's out of work, on unemployment, significantly less, or they've gotten some type of financial challenge that they're not quite making it. Now, the last thing anybody who owns a home wants to do is not pay the mortgage and live in that home. There's a pride of ownership.
Sure.
Everybody that lives in a home, and they've made it their own. And when somebody loses a home, it's a gut-wrenching event for most people. It really is.
Yep.
But here's the very queer thing that I have heard from folks. I wanted to do a loan modification with my lender, but they told me I have to go 3 months late before they'll even talk to me. Now, why would you not talk to somebody or your borrower if you knew they were having problems? If you knew that they were going to go late?
You're talking about from a lender's
From
standpoint.
a lender's perspective, or it's not necessarily a lender. Sometimes it's the servicer of the loan as well. Let's work things out. Now, there's a lot of legal stuff, and the reason there's a lot of legal stuff because when you go to settlement now, the closing package is about 2 inches thick, or better. Well, a lot of that's the legalese that has crept into there for somewhere along the line somebody sued them. But if you take a look and read the notes that borrowers sign, it says you're going to send me, and I'll just use a number as an example, $1,000 a month is what we will accept from you because that is your payment. If you get a couple months behind, or let's say you get 3 months behind, you can't send them 2 months worth. They generally won't accept it. They either need 3 months or nothing. So what happens is, not only do you get behind on the mortgage payment, but now you have late charges and interest. And now what we have is the wonderful word compound interest that starts backing up on those payments you missed. And here's a family.
Yeah, well, it's
that's
tough
having
enough
a
they couldn't
challenge.
make the $1,000 payment, but now they owe $4,500 to get caught up.
Exactly. And That's just tough.
It's very tough.
That is a
It's
hard
very
part
tough.
because, I mean, we got, what's the price of gas doing? The price of gas is
everything's going up.
Everything's going up.
Everything's going up.
So to have that, so the probability of that family losing that house increases, and a number of those folks that went late to get a loan modification end up losing the house because when the mortgage company comes back, they said, you're declined. We're not going to allow you the mortgage modification. Well, now I'm 3 months behind, or 4 or 5, waiting for the company to come back with the approval on the loan modification, and it doesn't happen. And it's there's just some illogical things happening. I
Right.
mean,
One thing it didn't make any
go
sense to
late
me.
on purpose?
It doesn't make any sense to me is when the market is declined, especially when the person just bought the house, say 5 or 6, 7 years ago. The market has definitely declined tremendously since then.
Absolutely.
And like you were saying, they bought a $300,000 house. They're going to be able to buy it back for $130. They're buying the same house for $130.
Yep. 4 years later.
Yeah. So why wouldn't the bank, rather than, okay, they got this guy on the hook for $300,000, why would they prefer to take that loan back or that property back and put it on and get it going for $100 and sell it for $100 or $130, rather than work with that guy, reduce some of the note or his interest or something, and try to find a payment that would work for him and keep him in here? They still got him on the hook for $300.
Great question. I don't know all the ins and outs of how they look at their profit and loss statements. Al, I can't say that I know everything that goes on with the overall.
Well, I have a theory. Let me throw it out
Go
there
ahead.
and kind of. I think that is the mortgage insurance. Once the guy defaults, how much of that mortgage insurance pays?
That generally when you get up at, like, people do a 95% financing, that's a 30% coverage. So they will cover 30%.
So on that $300,000 loan,
cover 100.
and so they pay it out $100. So they've got
And the other aspect you also have to take a look at as well, and I don't know that this covers all loans, but loans originated by banks, you also have come into play FDIC, which is the federal government, which may cover such exposure as well. So there may be times where it may be profitable for them to take the insurance.
Well, that's my
let
point.
the client default,
And then
put
sell
the
it.
house back in the market and sell it.
Yeah, or foreclose, or just sell it to a collector, or however that's the next thing. Once
Right.
they've got a little bit of that money in there, then they could
Right.
sell it to a collector. They're out and probably broke even or minimize their loss. And now the collector's bought it to where he can foreclose and make a profit. So the taxpayer's footing the bill for that.
There we go again.
We're paying for it in all
There we go
directions,
again.
folks.
It all comes back to our wallet, doesn't
Well,
it?
and it does. And the jobs, there's 40 million people out of work and growing every month. We need 150,000 jobs, I think, on average, about that many, increasing every month just to keep up with the demand, with the population. And currently we're losing 11,000 jobs. So if we're losing 11,000 jobs a month, we're really losing a lot more than that. We're losing, the 150 that you needed to start off with. You didn't make that nut, plus you lost 11,000. So that's, another thing that's playing into this. So with everything that's going on,
I think the employment reports that we get from the government go out for basically 6 months, and a lot of times they don't include some of the folks that have dropped off the rolls. I think they're,
and that's a very important fact, because myself, ever since I got into sales at 21 years old, I've been an independent contractor.
You've been unemployed every day.
It started out that way. I was working for a friend of mine, and I was studying the sales business. Mm-hmm. And the guy I was working for, he had a car dealership, and he says, Al, I'm going to close this store down. We were selling Porsches and Jaguars in Dover, so that was just bound to happen. Lamborghinis and Ferraris, right?
Yeah, you need pickup.
So, right. So he shut the store down, and he said, you can have a layoff, or I can put you in this other store that I have up here. And I said, here's my sales opportunity. I've been working for this guy for 3 years. As a young guy, I said, he was paying me $16 an hour at a car dealership in 1991. I thought that was great, but I was never going to make 60 grand there.
Right.
You know, so I was really thinking about that, and I said, well, this sales opportunity here is not something most people would try, but I had unemployment. And then the first week, I went in to collect my unemployment, and they said, did you make any money this week? I said, yeah. And they said, how many hours did you work? And I said, 60. They said, no more unemployment. So after that, I've been an independent contractor with no safety net. I lost my safety net right away.
Well, there you go. As I said, you're unemployed every day. As an independent contractor, if you don't go out and make a transaction, if you don't go out and make a deal, if you don't go out and close something or work, you don't get paid.
Right. And isn't that what the world's coming to? I mean, like you said, it started off with your dad. I don't know if did we record that with your dad? He worked 30 years. That was
outside.
We were testing the mics when you said, my wife's father, my neighbor down the street, he retired from Chrysler before all this mess happened, and they ended up shutting down the plant.
Right.
You know, so the days of finding a job out of high school or with a little bit of education, even a little bit of college, and then working for that company for 30 years, and then getting that watch, are even gone. You know, even though it seemed like such a great opportunity, it was for those folks. It was what they were promised. It was what they were dreaming of. It was way better than what they had.
You had defined benefit programs that paid them for the rest of their life through an annuity. They received a pension the rest of their life. So, I mean, that was the way pensions were done. Now, with the advent of 401ks and self-funded programs, those old type of pensions went away. I'll tell you what, I'm old enough to still have one of those old pensions from when I went to work for RCA back in the early 80s.
RCA, huh?
Yeah. So that I still have one of those, and I'll collect on that when I decide to retire.
I personally have a hard time seeing a future working for another company. And a lot of people see that too. And I see more independent contractors, independent businesses, even if it's just one guy doing his thing, consulting or cutting grass even.
Sure.
You know, how do those guys, they're not even counted. They're counted as unemployed. So those unemployment numbers could be a bit skewed, would you say?
My background being electronics and engineering, the old phrase "garbage in, garbage out" comes to mind. The output is entirely dependent upon the input. So the numbers that come out of these employment numbers are only good enough from the data coming in. So who's on the books, who's off the books? Al, I don't know. I don't know who's.
And then
on
there's
the books
there's honestly there's people out there. Are you an independent contractor with your company, or are you?
I am not.
Okay, so there's a lot of people out there like me that are independent contractors that have recently either gotten laid off or they've worked for another company and they've been let go for whatever reason, and they have that unemployment and they're out there working like I am as an independent contractor too. They just don't claim everything.
No, I'll tell you what. I was working as a manager for the brokerage, the mortgage brokerage I was working for, and I was on salary plus I was making commission. Well, they did away with my salary now, so I said, well, I just got to turn the commission faucet back on and get humping there and get that going. Now, I didn't realize, I learned later from another guy in my office who was handling the maintenance, said, well, you should apply for unemployment because you lost your full-time job and now you're on commission. Well, that was like 4 months after I did, so I went back and applied. They denied me. Even went back for a review, they denied me. And I'm thinking, well, I guess I didn't know the right way to play the game.
That's right. So, that's what they say. That's the right way to play the system.
So,
you know, when I lost my unemployment when I got into sales that first week, I went to my supervisor and I said, I don't have no unemployment anymore. He said, well, they won't be able to see you had that money for 6 months or a year. You could have collected it. And I was like, well, it didn't seem right to me, so I told him the truth. Shame on me. You know?
So that sort of compels people to do what, Al?
Huh? Cheat. Because they can, you know. It's not cheating if it's the rules that you got to play by and you just follow those. If you're not breaking the law, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I went in and did the right thing.
You did the right thing.
For what I thought, you know. Yeah. People do the right thing every day in their mind, and it's the wrong thing. You know, the right thing is what you believe it to be at the time. You know, you may find out different later. You know, so just
this is, you know, life's lessons a lot of times are the best and the cruelest.
Man, I hate to seem like doom and gloom, but good Lord. The foreclosures are on the rise. They're affecting our values. There's a ton of foreclosures that have not even been pursued. Right now they're saying that by the time you default, it's 2 years before they even show up at your door. to foreclose.
That's I don't know. That's probable. You believe me.
That's absolutely the case. I've been dealing with a lot of bank properties, and I'm
you?
seeing it. Yes, so I know that that's absolutely the case.
Well, they may not.
There's an
show
estimated 4 million foreclosures this year, but there's probably twice that many that they're not going to get to. These have got to come around if they don't modify the loan and keep the people in the house, which would kind of stabilize the market. You know, these banks have incentives to let it sit, collect a mortgage insurance. There's TARP money involved too, I'm sure, when they sell it off to the collector at the end and then take a loss. I mean, there has to be money in there. What happens when all these people that are left in the house and the house just sits, you know, when they leave those houses and they just sit 18 to 24 months, now $120,000 house is going to be sold for $40,000 to $60,000.
Yep.
So when they don't stay in the house, the value goes down. When they are staying in the house, if they don't get saved and they get foreclosed on, the foreclosures are definitely driving the value prices down in the markets right now.
And that's why I said it earlier, Al. I said the sooner that we, as professionals in the industry, try to get these back in to the hands of homeowners, the sooner we're going to see the values start to come back on real estate in most of the markets. But until that time, we're going to stay flat. At a minimum, we're going to stay flat. Like we discussed, you're still going to see pockets that are still going to be maybe get a little appreciation, but that's going to come as a result of location, desirability, and whether there's property selling in there, because appraisers got to go out and get comps on those those transactions.
Well, they're still selling. They're still selling new property, so the market is not dead. Obviously,
sure. We've seen a lot of small builders go away.
That's for sure. I've seen a lot of big builders go away or get in a mess, get tied up with other builders, merge, all kinds of stuff going on.
Consolidation.
All kinds of stuff going on right now. I know that if I look at it from a lender's standpoint, which I'm not, but if I were a private lender, I mean, are there a lot of private lenders out there, or is it mostly the government? It's mostly the government right now.
It's mostly the government right now. And the reason it's mostly the government now is because there's not a great profit to be made in mortgages. Let's look at the interest rates. Okay, what type of margin? Okay.
Well, that's my point. I mean, if I was a private lender, I'm looking at something. Okay, I'm going to lend you out a bunch of my cash for a long period of time, secured by an asset that's bound to decline in value, to someone who might lose their job or some of their income.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's. I'd be a bit nervous right now if I was a private lender.
Absolutely, and there's not a whole lot of them, and the ones that are out there, Al, they're not lending at high loan to values. They're lending at 60, 65% loan to value. Some of these are, and then you have hard money lenders as well, and the hard money lenders are the ones that will make some money. And the reason they're going to make some money is because they're only going to lend in situations where it would be virtually impossible to lose money.
Right.
A lot of the times they're going to work with investors, finding a distressed property that needs a little bit of help that we know is going to sell. I just did a transaction with a gentleman with a property out in Clayton that the property would sell on the market at that time for about $200,000. Well, he was picking it up for about $75,000, needed about $30,000 in work. Well, he was doing it as an investor. At that time, there was no investment rehab money out there, none. So I found a hard money lender for him. He had a little skin in the game, but the exit strategy for that was, hey, I'm going to fix this thing up. The lender came down, looked at the property. The guy came down, said, okay, understand, get it. Let's turn it around. And they lent like 95% of the actual acquisition costs, and the buyer basically took care of the kitchen cabinets that were ripped out, the refrigerator, stuff like that needed to be done, and paved the driveway. So, but that property went on the market, and the hard money lender says, I got my exit strategy, I'm going to get my money back because I know that this investor is picking this up for so far below market value that when he turns around, I know it's going to sell quick, and he's going to have it priced right to move.
And that's the key thing right now. You have to make your money when you buy, because because it's when you buy that your profit margin is there. And in a declining market, time is not on your side. You have to buy it, have your plan together, get it done, get it back on the market, and get in front of that curve with I keep saying, and I don't want to be a doom and gloom guy here, but the market is declining. If you want to sell next, you have to be in front of that curve. If you're behind the curve and the buyers take up their options, the curve's going to go down next time, and you're still going to be behind it. The sooner you sell right now, the more you're going to get.
Al, you hit the nail on the head. Every investor, every seasoned real estate investor knows the money's made on the acquisition, not the sale.
Yeah, and it's not just real estate; it's any business, you know,
Sure.
and buying and selling
Sure.
anything.
Absolutely.
You know?
But if you don't get the deal on the sale,
That's where the
you're not
that's
gonna
where the
make
money is
on the back end.
That's
it's
where
just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Smart. That was a very smart call.
Thanks, Chris.
Sure, Al.
I'm not totally ignorant over here. Just mostly ignorant to most of the stuff that's out there.
I did not allude to that, sir.
Well, I have been a struggling real estate agent these last couple of years, man, and I am not a quitter, as people will find out. I'm good at marketing, and I just haven't been marketing myself properly, so we're going to turn that around. So we've learned today that there is capital out there. There are rehab loans available. The government's pretty much the only person lending money out there. I mean, they're making it the easiest.
Sure. Well, on top of that, you also remember you have USDA, which is another government entity lending.
So the government's loaning all the money out there.
Yeah.
So we learned quite a few things here today. I think the mortgage interest deduction is something that we should keep. It seems to be quite debatable when I read into it, but it's something that's here now, and if they take it away, what are they? They're just taking away from the people. They need to cut expenses, but I don't think they need to cut them there.
Let's take a look at one thing. If President Obama gets reelected, the probability of that happening increases incredibly, because he doesn't have to worry about getting reelected. So if the House and the Senate go any way Democratic, and President Obama is reelected, there's a higher probability of that mortgage interest deduction going away.
How do you feel about Donald Trump?
I'm glad I have a better head of hair than him, but
that's not hard.
Donald knows the media.
He is good with that, isn't he?
Well, sure. I mean, he's very good with it.
Is it obvious to everybody, or is it just obvious to us? Or it's obvious to me. He's a media hog, but he knows how to play that game. He knows how to. He gets himself in the media, and you can't deny that. And it seems almost cheesy to me but he's good. He's good at it. Is that the guy we want for president?
He's an entrepreneur and he's a performer that we know.
So is Ronald Reagan.
There you go.
How do you feel about Donald Trump for president? He's going to come here next week, and he's going to announce on my show after his...
Hey, put that crack plate down, Al.
After Celebrity Apprentices.
I don't know that... I'll make two statements. I don't know that he would be my primary choice for president, but I believe there's the possibility that it would be better than where we are today as far as president. That's where I'll leave that. I have my ideas for who
I have to agree with you there, but based on his talent and marketability, I think same thing with President Obama in the last election. I think Donald Trump has a really good chance of winning, regardless of what he's saying or what he's doing, just because of his ability to get in front of people.
I don't doubt that, without a doubt.
And rally people.
Absolutely right.
That's what Obama did.
Donald
Obama was in my
sell.
Email every day. Obama was getting people to donate money. He raised more money than anybody else. You know, he rallied people together.
Sure.
And he got himself elected. If Donald Trump doesn't do anything else, I think he could probably rally people together just as good, because that's his thing. That's what he's good at.
What does that say about the American people?
We're sheep. We're sheep. And I'll have you doing that now next week on the show. We'll have Chris on there as the sheep. Be part of our
Pass the woolite.
Full-time sound effects there.
But what does that say about us as a people? That we find people electable based upon their TV popularity?
Ronald Reagan got to be president.
Sure, I understand that.
People knew who he was.
About us?
And you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Ronald Reagan got in front of the people. He made his spiel, and people liked it. And he was obviously not that bad a president. People liked him. People love him to this day. Some people don't think much of him. Some people will still tell you he was an actor. That's the only reason he got in there. And that may have played it a lot into it, but I think you can get into the limelight and make yourself look like a fool as well.
Yeah. I think W did that on a few occasions, didn't he?
Excellent point there. Yep.
Gerald Ford.
I got 3 books on my shelf upstairs to back that up. Maybe we'll do some Bushisms next time.
God.
All right, well, today it seems like we covered a lot of stuff. Hopefully you learned something. I know I learned quite a bit here with Chris Rowe from Prime Lending. That's mortgageformyhome.com. You can find Chris at mortgage4myhome.com.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, thanks for coming.
Appreciate
I appreciate it. Greatly appreciate it.
You got it, buddy.
All right, folks. Well, it's time to plug some of the folks who support this show, DelawareVideography.com. Please visit them for all your video needs, virtual tours for realtors, and video for everyone. YouSellDelaware.com. If you want to sell real estate on your own, don't do it without a professional. That's the letter U, SELLDE.com. Also, RichardHBailey.com. Fine art for everyone. Please visit RichardHBailey.com. It's a new age of entertainment and information out there, and it's all for free. Marshcast.com and Smodcast.com. Well, that'll do it for the Delaware Real Estate Show this week. Thanks for tuning in. Please send me your love or your hate mail or your fan mail or whatever you might have or your questions to alluscavar@gmail.com. And as always, I am just a phone call away. 302-423-0276. I am at your service. We'll see you next time. Have a great week.